You're listening to the groundbreaking podcast from the Global Ag Tech Initiative. The Global Ag Tech Initiative is the catalyst for connecting, engaging, and fostering dialogue in global food production with technology as the foundation for driving innovation and solutions. The groundbreaking podcast brings forth voices across the industry to discuss trends, best practices, and innovative ideas driving agriculture forward in a rapidly changing world. Thanks for joining us. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Groundbreaking Podcast. I'm Heather Tunstall, co-chair of the Global Ag Tech Initiative. And during today's episode, we're talking with Steve Sibulkin, CEO of BioLumic, an ag biotech company based in the U.S. and New Zealand. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Heather, for having me.
Absolutely. You know, often with our Groundbreaking Podcast and our Global Ag Tech Initiative, we're talking about many of the external technologies that help protect and monitor plants. But BioLumic is flipping that on its head a bit by addressing plant traits at the seed level for higher quality and protection from environmental factors. Tell us a bit about that. How does the technology work and where are you today?
Yeah, thank you. So BioLumic, as you mentioned, is an ag biotech company, and our primary focus is on developing a new category of seed traits. And the traits that we're generating are light activated. So we're using light signals that were developed over the past, 10 years and tested in the field to photomorphogenically, essentially to program those plants with light to regulate their genetic expression. So we're inducing or we're catalyzing additional yield traits or compositional traits. We're doing a work with our platform to unlock more potential from those seeds from within the seed itself.
Well, that's really impressive. And, we're talking a little bit about, the UV photo expression and how that changes the traits of the plant. Is this something that is already happening in the industry, or how is it different from what people have experienced before?
Most of the world of seed traits are focused on biotech crop traits, GMO traits, and genetic expression traits executed by CRISPR. Those are well kind of infiltrated in most of the markets. Those are powerful technologies. This particular approach to developing seed traits does not involve changing the genetics of a plant. And so that means a couple of things. One is that there's not a large regulatory process. There's no regulatory encumbrance in terms of time and capital and costs. We are simply deploying these light signals on a one-time application that avoids the need for that regulatory approach. That's one difference. The other is that this particular category, since it doesn't change underlying genetics, creates an opportunity for seed companies to use their preferred varieties and add an additional benefit for farmers that doesn't require them to change to a new variety, a new genetically modified seed. And so that is all new. We're a leader in that part of the space, and there are other terrific seed innovations, but we're today the only company that's using light activated seed traits and working across multiple crops.
Interesting. Okay. So that really reduces the time getting it to the market with the lack of regulatory hurdles to go through there.
That's absolutely right. GMO seed trait can take $150 million in 10 years, right? There's a significant timeline and capital costs there. And again, they're important and powerful, but the timelines are immense, and genetically engineered crops quicker, but still a significant time and investment. Our technology, we believe, can take 90% of the cost and time out of developing a seed trait. We're doing it very quickly. It's shown in the field. And once we have an approach to a trait on a crop, corn, hybrid yield, that type of trait, we can very quickly add that trait to different varieties and other related crops and species.
Yeah. Okay. And we often hear about some of these kind of genetic applications at the plant level, the mature plant level. Why focus on seeds rather than the mature plant?
That's interesting. The company was founded in 2013, and most of that work done by our founder, Jason Wargent, focused initially on plants. And plants are very responsive to our light signal applications. And there was work done on lettuce and strawberries, very large yield gains. But about 6 years ago, the company started to do a little bit of testing with seeds, of
Hmm.
course. And I've been with the company for about 5 years now. And the primary reason that I joined was that I was interested in that seed application because seeds are a massive, it's a $70 billion market and growing. And the innovation process is tremendous, but it's broken in the way that we've described, right? It takes too long. Not all crops have traits that are available to them. Some markets don't allow for certain traits. And so the ability to take a technology and apply it through seeds means that we are taking, a tremendous catalyst, our light signal recipes, and this very scalable, important vector, if you will, for scaling into the global market. And that's exactly what we've done. So we've focused on corn and soybeans and rice and forage grass and have tested with other crops. And this creates a global distribution opportunity for us for these new traits.
Wonderful. So we talked a little bit about kind of the process by which farmers can adopt some of this, but process and change is not really something that farmers appreciate when it really disrupts their workflow. It really becomes a hindrance to trying to get a profit and get their plants in the ground. Talk a little bit about how that works with your technology. Is this much of a disruption for farmers?
We spend a significant amount of time thinking about how to minimally disrupt the
Yeah.
entire ecosystem. And this goes from the farmer to the, potentially an ag retailer or a seed company, which is one of our primary partners. So the way that our technology is actually deployed is intended to make it frictionless. So when we apply our light signal treatments, it's actually done on a parent line, an inbred corn crop, for example, that then develops into, in the following season, a hybrid. That's a process that is well laid out, it's well established. And by treating a generation above, we're creating a scalable effect that doesn't require a change in seed production or seed distribution. And for a farmer who would get a trait, it's simply a part of the bag, right? They get more value in the field, more yield, better root growth, changes in composition that they want. And it's a very familiar selection process for how they would think about and curate and determine their seeds. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, because we're working within the seed and not changing the underlying genetics, we can apply these to their preferred varieties. And so the process of producing, inducing, presenting, and using the technology is really frictionless.
That's amazing. And I'm sure something that they would really like to hear because that's often a hindrance to adoption. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
I imagine to build out a program such as this, it takes a lot of partnerships and collaboration within the industry. Can you share a bit about that and why it's important to collaborate with others?
Absolutely. We think of our four primary crops, corn, soybean, rice, and forage grass, as having anchor partners. So sort of internally our semantic. And what this means is that we have a partner that is looking ahead and interested in activating different types of traits within a crop, and also as a pathway for large scale distribution, either directly or indirectly. So for example, we in 2023 announced a collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Right. One of the things that they're focused on is the encouragement of something called DDSR in rice. Basically, the ability to cultivate rice without flooding the paddy. Right. And so one of our traits is a vigor trait that's established across multiple crops to have a more vigorous young rice plant, a rice vigor trait there allows for rice to be grown in a way that allows the rice to outcompete weeds without flooding a paddy, right? So that reduces methane, it allows for new yield and mechanization opportunities, reduces labor costs. And so we have this anchor partner that's working with us and helping us to establish important other partnerships in the target area with that crop. This one is focused on India. We just also announced a collaboration with a very large dairy. This is in New Zealand, but with sort of a global intent there. And so, these types of collaborations put us at the front lines of how farmers are thinking about products. They create a distribution pathway for us, and they certainly, from an economic perspective, are important subsidizations of our process.
Wonderful. And you talk a little bit about the regulations and reducing methane. Consumer demand, and in some cases, regulations themselves can often necessitate a focus on the environment when it comes to agriculture. So, can you talk a little bit about that and how your technology impacts environmental outcomes?
Absolutely. We're in the rice work and the forage grass work that I mentioned. We have actually an impact investor, Zola, that has said, these are methane moonshots. And I love that phrasing here for us because these are the methane emission in rice and livestock feed are two of the biggest carbon emitters for agriculture and very difficult to address. And so the ability to take a seed and in the case of rice, so rice is grown 90% outside the U.S., of course, right, where a lot of our other market is in corn and soy. And to think about the many, many different growing conditions and environments in which it's grown and the need to be able to apply that and provide it to farmers to understand it and to utilize it and so forth is amazing, right? So seeds don't require that same sort of instruction manual. It's used in a way that is non-disruptive and doesn't have a sort of an encumbering process for training and implementation. So there's not only sort of a large benefit to reducing the methane that emits from rice cultivation from flooding, there's a process and an approach that's taken that enables that actual implementation, right? Where farmers will use it. The same thing is true with our forage grass work, where the primary carbon emission source is enteric fermentation, livestock-driven methane. The blocker in many cases for adoption of a technology that would reduce methane is economic, right? And so part of it is, does it work? Of course, great. Part of it is, when is it available? Important. But the other part is, will farmers use it, right? And so in this case, we're adding other traits. This is part of our work with the dairy that I mentioned, and the traits around productivity and metabolizable energy increases, so that it's not just helping the environment, it's helping to drive an economic gain that also helps the environment to really create a pathway towards truly sustainable environmental productivity and good outcomes.
Wonderful. That's great. And speaking of which, this is a very general question, but hoping to kind of tie it together as a holistic view. How is your technology helping the grower at the grower level be more profitable, be more efficient, and ultimately be more successful in their business?
Absolutely. In corn and soy, so corn is our most advanced crop today, and I'll use that as an example. And just to provide a little bit of history there. So in 2022, we started working on hybrid corn. And this is the seeds that are planted by farmers in the US that's on 90 million acres. And in 2023, we started working on parent lines of corn, right? This is the corn that's where there are these traits that are combined and crossed to form these unbelievable hybrids. And we showed a very nice yield gain there for that. This is sort of a yield depressed area in red corn. But what was important was that we had done that work to actually look at the next thing, which is the ability to pass our traits from one generation to another, again, without changing underlying genetics. And so what we saw there was that when we had programmed the parent lines, it conveyed to the hybrid seeds, the seeds that are planted. And not only did that trait persist, but it amplified. And so we have been seeing some just insanely high yield gains there, 20%, 30% more. And for a farmer to get that type of benefit that stacks, if you will, that it's incremental on their existing varieties is transformative, right? Transformative for their economics, for the ease of use of getting that yield gain. And there are other gains as well that we're intending to bundle that with that protein and other compositional gains, growth, nitrogen use efficiency focused traits. But a farmer taking a variety with that incremental gain without changing their process is quick and obviously economically very compelling for them.
Wonderful. Yeah. And when we're looking at, the next few years coming down the pike here, what is going on with BioLumic? What are we looking forward to in the next few years?
We're very excited. We're doing a lot of work on our hybrid traits. So this pass through, this conveyance that I mentioned here. And our belief, because we've worked across 15 traits now, we don't focus on all of them commercially. And the mechanisms that we're targeting, we know exist across all plant techs, and we're seeing it in the field, in the lab, the greenhouse, and then validated in the field. So this newer discovery of trait conveyance and this sort of amplified gain for hybrid crops is a big lane for us. So we're pushing forward there pretty significantly with some major seed companies. We're talking about, today we work in New Zealand for an India-based target with the Gates Foundation that I mentioned. And in North America, we are expected to do a few South American deployments there as well, and add a crop or two there as well. So things are moving along quickly now.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. Stephen, anything else that you think would be valuable for our audience to know about?
Our thought about the market is that seed innovations are absolutely critical, right? For timing, for food security, for carbon mitigation, for profitability of farmers. We think of our technology as one arrow in the quiver, right? We have to work with a range. We get to work with a range of unbelievable innovations. The thing that we are really focused on is this notion of improved timing and incrementality, right? This incremental way to add to what a farmer is working on. And the speed at which we're producing these traits, we think, makes it a very important arrow in that quiver. And we're really excited about the partners that we have that are helping us to reach those growers.
That's so nice. And you're exactly right. It's a collaborative effort, but it is so important for the industry. And it's really interesting to hear what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And where can our audience get a hold of the folks at BioLumic? Where should we look for more information?
The best way is to go to our website at www.biolumic.com and see our results, some of our solutions that are in market, and some of the other technologies and areas that we're working on.
Wonderful. Stephen, thank you again so much for taking the time today and joining us on the Groundbreaking podcast.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Groundbreaking Podcast from the Global Ag Tech Initiative. You can subscribe to our podcast at globalagtechinitiative.com by clicking on the podcast tab in the menu, or by subscribing to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Global Ag Tech Initiative's weekly e-newsletter, The Signal, for all things ag tech. Visit globalagtechinitiative.com and click on the Signal subscribe button on the right-hand side of the home page. Of course, you can also find us on LinkedIn. Just search for Global Ag Tech Initiative. To get even more in tune with the global ag tech space and be active in its advancement, consider joining the Global Ag Tech Alliance. More information on how to join the Alliance is available on globalagtechinitiative.com. The Global Ag Tech Initiative and the Groundbreaking Podcast are produced by Meister Media Worldwide. I'm Heather Tunstall, co-chair for the Global Ag Tech Initiative. Thank you for joining us today.